A degree doesn't stop you from feeling stuck. We pile up knowledge, certifications, and clever ideas, and then freeze when it's time to act. You do overthink, you do rehearse until the moment passes, you do hide behind being informed instead of doing something messy and real. This isn't blame. It's a quiet trap built by pressure, perfection, and a brain wired to avoid mistakes. Stick around and you'll see why smart thinking can become self-sabotage, and learn 3 simple, practical moves to turn what you know into what you do. No PhD and courage required. 1. The paradox of modernity. High levels of schooling and technical skill often show up next to a strange feeling. First, I know a lot, and first do feel stuck. Experts report that deep knowledge does not automatically buy freedom to act. Instead, it sometimes buys a ticket to a tightly scripted role. A surgeon, for example, may master complex procedures, yet follow hospital rules about what to do and when to speak up. An adjunct professor can design brilliant courses but still lack the job security to choose which topics to teach. These are concrete cases where expertise and lack of control live in the same office. Too much information and too many options make decisions harder, not easier. When first do face a big choice, first sometimes open 50 tabs and still leave the room undecided. This is not laziness, but a real cognitive bottleneck known as analysis paralysis, which simply means thinking so much that action stalls. In everyday life, that looks like endlessly comparing job offers, tweaking a resume, or rewriting an email until the send button feels dangerous. Tech workers report product roadmaps handed down from above. They do excellent work, yet rarely decide the direction. Humor helps. First do collect certifications like Pokemon cards, but they don't evolve into real power. Credentials and roles can create mismatches between ability and autonomy. People with advanced degrees often do work that requires their skills, but not their judgment, because organizations separate execution from strategy. A lawyer may do long hours researching and drafting while partner-level decisions are made in closed rooms. A data scientist can build models, but discover the company won't use them because the business favors simpler stories. This is not a moral failing. This is structure. By naming it out loud, first you see the gap between what first can do and what first get to choose. The issue becomes clearer, not shaming. Small, practical moves restore momentum more reliably than grand revolutions. First, you start with one tiny decision. Prioritize 3 tasks, say yes to one meeting and no to another, or test an idea in a weekend. Peer networks help too. When first you share constraints with colleagues, we sometimes create collective influence that a single expert could not. Leaders can widen the space for judgment by inviting input and protecting experiments. And individuals can practice saying, first do recommend 10th, because instead of asking for permission forever. The paradox stays real, but action, even imperfect action, peels away the helpless feeling, one small choice at a time. 2. Where the chain breaks. Formal learning builds knowledge, yet that knowledge often sits idle because real-world problems demand action, not just answers. Practical tasks require quick judgment, negotiation, and trade-offs that schooling rarely practices. Decision fatigue and choice overload show up. When faced with too many options or unclear stakes, people delay or pick safe, low-impact choices. First, overanalyze alternatives, and then first postpone making a call. That small habit chips away at opportunities over time. Practical skill gaps crop up where classroom neatness meets messy reality. First can solve a math proof, but first fumble when a team member needs clear direction. Communication and political navigation are not optional extras. They're the hinges that let expertise swing into influence. Many professionals discover this the hard way. A skilled analyst writes brilliant memos that no one reads because the memo doesn't connect to the boss's priorities, or a researcher builds a prototype that never reaches users because business steps were never learned. Organizational barriers break the chain next. Offices hide invisible rules. Who speaks at meetings, how promotions really happen, and which projects get funding. Those rules favor people who know the culture. First, avoid small talk in the break room, and then first miss informal chances to be noticed. Mentorship, networks, and timing all matter. When those supports are absent, competence does not translate into career momentum. It becomes private satisfaction. Emotional friction plays a role too. Imposter feelings and fear of visible failure make people protect their image instead of taking bold risks. First, shrink from showing unfinished work, and so first never get the feedback that would improve it. Small, repeated avoidance compounds into stagnation. Meanwhile, incentive misalignment, when organizational rewards favor short-term metrics over learning or collaboration, pushes capable people into safe but uninspiring routines. Finally, resource constraints finish off many good starts. Time, energy, and psychological bandwidth are limited. Busy professionals juggle deadlines, family, and health. First, choose urgent work over important growth tasks and the skill-deploying chain phrase further. The fixes are practical: clearer expectations, simple mentorship, small chances to practice leadership, and explicit opportunities to translate knowledge into action. Those are the places where rebuilding the missing links yields the biggest payoff. 3. Why education doesn't save. Higher education raises knowledge and creates credentials, but it does not automatically change the real-world forces that shape outcomes. Degrees signal ability to some employers, yet jobs also require networks, timing, and specific hands-on habits that diplomas rarely teach. In plain terms, knowing a lot and getting ahead are related but not the same thing. Many people discover that being smart makes it easier to learn. It does not, however, make life hand them everything on a silver platter. One big gap is practical skills versus abstract skills. Classrooms reward neat arguments, tests, and papers. Workplaces reward communication, patience, timing, and the ability to handle messy problems. For example, a chemistry major does master reactions on paper, but may not do well in a lab that depends on quiet persistence, paperwork, and team politics. First, do collect certificates, and first do forget to practice the small, routine tasks that keep a job stable, like showing up on time, asking for help, or reading the unwritten rules of a workplace. That mismatch turns knowledge into a half-ready tool. Social and structural factors also matter more than we like to admit. Who you know, where you live, and the hiring norms in your city shape opportunities. Two people with similar degrees can end up with very different lives because one has mentors, internships, or a local network that opens doors. This is not a moral failing. It is logistics. A recent grad may do everything by the book, yet still find themselves underemployed because jobs require experience that only a few entry-level openings provide. Degrees become necessary, but not sufficient. Emotional and behavioral skills are another blind spot. Schools often focus on information, not on how to handle stress, manage money, or keep relationships healthy. As a result, first do excel at problem sets, and first do fall apart at overdue bills or social friction. Smart minds still procrastinate, chase quick fixes, and underestimate long-term risks. Cognitive shortcuts sneak in just the same. First do assume a plan will take less time than it actually will, or first do stick to a preferred source of information instead of checking other views. These are human tendencies, not signs of stupidity. Finally, the landscape keeps changing, and education is rarely a one-time ticket. Technology and market needs shift, friends move, and companies reorganize. Lifelong learning, humility, and adaptable habits are what buffer these shocks. Small, concrete moves help. Internships, mentorship, practicing conversations, learning basic financial tasks, and joining communities where people trade favors. No single class solves all of it. A diploma helps, but it must be paired with everyday skills, social capital, and emotional upkeep to actually keep a smart person from feeling helpless. 4. The real consequences of inaction. Many highly educated people freeze at decision points that seem small at first, and those small freezes add up into real, visible losses. Someone who does not negotiate a salary or ask for a promotion often stays in the same pay band, while peers move ahead. An engineer who does not volunteer to lead a project watches design ideas they suggested carried out by someone else. These are concrete missed opportunities, not just abstract feelings. Careers stall when intelligent people repeatedly choose inaction over risk. Teams lose momentum when experienced members do not speak up. Junior hires fill the vacuum, and organizational knowledge gets fragmented. Companies pay for this in wasted training, repeated mistakes, and slower innovation. For the individual, the cost is cumulative. Fewer leadership roles, flatter trajectories, and diminished influence over how work gets done. Personal life suffers too. First, you avoid difficult conversations, and then wonder why resentment grows. Avoidance makes small problems louder and friendships thinner. Stress builds quietly, leading to sleepless nights or low energy, and that erodes performance at work and at home. Mental strain shows up as decision fatigue or reluctance to try new things, which is the opposite of what a curious, educated mind should be doing. The wider ripple effects are striking. Communities and organizations miss out on ideas that could improve services or create new products. When smart people do not act, policy debates lack informed voices, and public institutions operate with less expertise than they could. It's not about blame, it's exposure. The brain power is there, but when it sits still, the payoff never materializes. A little nudge can flip the outcome. Once movement starts, momentum builds, and those lost possibilities begin to look less permanent and more like missed chances that are still recoverable. 5. Helplessness is the path to the abyss. When capable people knock on the same locked door enough times, something predictable happens. They stop knocking. This isn't about talent failing. It's about experience teaching the brain that effort and good ideas won't change the outcome. Smart minds often face polite refusals, opaque decision chains, or endless red tape, and those repeated rejections teach a simple lesson. First, do nothing because doing feels pointless. That pattern shows up everywhere. A software developer spots a clear bug but doesn't raise it because previous warnings were ignored. A teacher designs a student-centered lesson but reverts to the syllabus after administrators push back. Too often the slide into passivity is gradual. At first do small compromises. First do soften my language in meetings. First do avoid rocking the boat. Then first do bigger things. First do stop volunteering for projects that matter. First do say yes to busy work rather than advocate for change. Emotion follows behavior. Frustration turns to cynicism, then to a quieter resignation. People who are quick to innovate become experts at explaining why nothing can change, and their days fill with perfect reasons for inaction. It looks logical from the outside, but inside it feels like watching your professional self shrink. The practical harm is real and visible. Creativity dulls because first do not practice it. Relationships fray because first do not speak up. Careers stall because first do not take small risks. Organizations lose more than a few good ideas. They lose people who know how to fix things. For example, clinicians who know a better care pathway can feel forced into routines and end up performing tasks they disagree with, creating moral distress. In tech, engineers who stop proposing improvements let technical debt grow, and the company pays later. No single actor is to blame. Systems and habits conspire to teach otherwise capable people to stop trying. There are simple, testable ways out. Break big changes into tiny experiments and label them clearly. First do one small prototype. First do one short demo. First do one ask for specific feedback. Those micro wins rebuild trust with yourself and with others. Make requests concrete. Ask for permission to run a 2-week trial rather than to change everything and bring measurable outcomes. Build allies. One colleague who supports you is better than a dozen silent witnesses. Track what you try and what actually changes. Facts push back against the feeling that effort is useless. Add humor where you can. A small laugh lightens a heavy meeting and reminds people you are still human. Shift the language you use about yourself. Replace "first I'm stuck" with "first do stop myself," and then name one tiny action you will do instead. That switch isn't magical, but it forces clarity. Systems can be rigid, and people can be worn down. Still, the path back from giving up is practical and paved with small choices. Start with a modest experiment, celebrate the outcome, and repeat. The abyss is deep only if first do nothing. Otherwise, it becomes a place to learn how to climb. We just walked through a hidden crisis. Smart, educated people do feel stuck because knowledge doesn't always come with clear paths, support, or emotional tools. First do overthink decisions that look easy on paper. First do chase perfection that slows me down. And first do sometimes feel like a fraud, even with a resume full of wins. Systems and expectations push us into neat boxes, not because someone meant to hurt us, but because the rules were never designed for whole, messy humans. The good news is that these problems are understandable and fixable in small, practical ways. Not with more guilt, but with better habits, clearer choices, and kinder communities, and maybe fewer late-night research rabbit holes. If this touched you, subscribe to the channel and share the video with someone who understands. Leave a comment about one small thing you do to cope with difficulties or what you need help with. Next, we'll show you why pressure improves thinking. Thank you for staying with us. We achieve better results when we do this together, step by step.